Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode. I'm glad that you are here. We are going to continue what I'm starting to believe is the court case saga because my life, it's like going back through all of this. It's remarkable that this was even my life, and now we're finally telling the story because when this is over and done with, it will end with a happy note. So today's episode is Reunited. So first thing we're going to talk about is service.
Yeah.
Because that was the most ridiculous part about this entire endeavor.
Right.
Endeavor.
So for people that don't know, legally, if you're starting a legal action against someone, you file what needs to be filed, and then you have to serve them to actually initiate the action. Until that's done, until that's done, there is no, it doesn't start. And your previous attorney had.
So I will
exhibit one.
So for those that don't know, so like obviously service is considered legal by the court system, and there's 3 different forms of service, right? There's service by certified mail, process server, and service by newspaper, right?
Well, in the particular, when you're serving someone with, like, for example, the petition to establish paternity, at that point you're going to have, like, service by certified mail is really not going to work. You need personal service. But in the event that can't happen, because she was at the shelter, and I think the shelter had told your previous attorney that they would accept service on her behalf.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And she received service there and then refused it.
So she straight up returned it. So like these right here are letters that was sent out to her. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then giant ones, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we tried to serve her 18 times. And then that's when we went to process server, which was, I'll say just Matthew. I won't say his last name.
Right.
He tried to serve her. Her mother stated in an affidavit that by Matthew, what he wrote was that, quoted her mother, quote, "I will not help my birth name out in this situation," end quote. So her mother aided and embedded the ability for her child, which is my son's mom, to conceal him from me. And then when that didn't work out, we went to the next one, which was service by publication.
Okay.
And that's for 3 weeks for 3 consecutive.
Right. Yeah. So every week the local newspaper will publish it.
Yeah.
And it's basically to qualify for giving public notice to the person that you're trying to locate and serve. And the judge did give you guys permission to try it that way. And then at that point, she agreed to set it for trial after you guys completed that.
Well, I think what the judge at that time, because I remember like we had done the process server, and my old attorney had made me feel like under the impression that like we have done every single bit of service possible, blah, 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 blah. And when the judge was like, I feel like we need to move towards publication. And it was because she was so
new.
And she's new as a judge, but she wanted to be very, very, very precise, which leads us to our next thing about the, she can't say this, but I will. But at the same time, our judge was very, very precise and wanted to do everything by the book.
Yes.
Which, ended up being like the exact opposite.
Right. It ended up hurting you on a technicality. But ultimately, you were granted sole custody of a child that you hadn't seen, and at that point, I think almost 9 months.
No, that was 18 months at that point, because that day was August 20th.
No, I'm talking about when she granted you sole custody.
Oh yeah, no.
Before you ever knew how to. Yeah. So that was March. So that was like a year after you filed petition for paternity,
Yep.
you guys were able to get a default judgment,
Yep.
which granted you sole custody.
And then it was several months later that all of a sudden, you know, I'm looking at the website that I'm leaving unnamed and find out that another attorney had filed an motion to enter, or an motion of appearance.
It's an entry of appearance, which means that you've gone and hired an attorney, and then that it was less than a month after you were granted sole custody, which leads, you know, I think any reasonable person to believe that she was, you know, following the case history, and, you know, the whole time she was evading, you know, running from these letters or sending them back. Right. But ultimately, she did hire an attorney, and they said, no, we're going to file a motion to vacate the judgment, which granted you sole custody. So and it was a default judgment, which means there was never a trial. It was just through the fact that she didn't show up after she'd been served. In this situation, like, if, like, from a default perspective, is like the only way a default judgment happens is when a person does not appear in court. Mm-hmm. Like, either they refuse or they just don't care and they just don't show up. And you have to establish that there's been proper service in order to get that default judgment. And so to you. In this situation, you know, when I found out that the attorney had filed an entry of appearance on her behalf, that's when I called my old attorney and was just like, this happened several weeks ago. When were you going to call me and tell me that suddenly now there's an attorney on her behalf? And now she's going to take part, and she's going to take part in this. And then I remember seeing the motion for vacate. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, what does that mean? Right. Like, so I'm asking the paralegal to my old attorney, and he's like, well, it means this, this, and this. And I was like, but we have service. We have evidence. We have this, we have that. There should be no reason for it to be vacated. And he was like, yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. And I remember those exact words. Yeah, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And the thing about attorneys is that they can't guarantee you anything. And they're officers of the court, which means that they have to uphold the truth. And so in this situation, the person that was guaranteeing me or telling me this was a paralegal and not an attorney. So at that moment, me being somewhat ignorant, not realizing that that's what is happening, I'm just believing everything that's being told to me. So then all of a sudden now you and I get to meet, because the paralegal was like, well, your attorney is going to be out of town, which, keep in mind, he was out of town quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And pretty much asked you to step in on this case. And I remember just like, what on earth? And I remember the paralegal was just like, oh, you'll be fine. Manny's great. I think she's a good fit for you. And I was just like, okay. And then I remember the first time we talked on the phone, like, you know, we had spoken about a couple things. I'm not sure what we had spoken about. And then I remember going like, okay, well, I'll see you tomorrow. It's like, okay. And then I remember I came to the courthouse, I met you, and I was like in the best suit that I had from Men's Warehouse. Like, you know. Well, darling, you looked dashing. Thank you. And I remember I was so tired because it was a big pivotal moment because, one, I knew she was going to be there. Mm-hmm. And I knew that we had finally gotten her attention because a default judgment at that point, with the circumstance with that default judgment, basically was just like, hey, it is paternity, custody, visitation, application for drug testing, and an motion for psychological evaluation. So all that stuff would have been put on her if the default judgment would have not been vacated. So if I was sitting on the other side, I would have been like, oh crap. Like, absolutely. Like, yeah. Oh gosh. Like, so at this point, she's been gone for 18 months. Mm-hmm. Well, we're thinking to ourselves, well, she didn't want me keeping tabs on her because she's telling the cops that I'm this horrible person, that she wants to be unfound. But then she's keeping tabs on me, because how else would you have known that there was a default judgment against you if you weren't keeping tabs on it? She absolutely was. She absolutely was keeping tabs on me. Of course she was. So, like, oh, okay. Well, you know, and I was, kind of going back to how I got on the case, I was given less than 48 hours notice to prepare for your hearing. And I was never told that there was an additional issue to the case besides proving, I was told, learn all the different times that we attempted service and how those were not successful and what, and just break those down. And, I've got 4 children of my own. And it was like the hearing was the day after my kid's first day of school. And I'd stayed up pretty much all night preparing. So I was exhausted too. So both of us were just like, not knowing what to expect.
Right.
And it turns out that there was a bigger issue that was not told to either of us.
Yep.
And it was a procedural error made by your previous attorney where they had failed to file the motion for default judgment, which is, just something that you have to do. And because of that, the judge was worried about it being appealed anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to tell, at the motion to vacate judgment, what was ruled, go ahead, because it was devastating to you and so also devastating to me because of that.
I remember sitting in like the courtroom and it was like, I'm sitting here going like, oh, this will be fine, because I'm still going off of what a paralegal told me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're standing in front of me, I'm sitting in what is like a church chair, essentially, the long chairs, and because of COVID, it shut down the courthouses for a while too. So like, when you're in the courtroom, we all had masks on, and the opposing attorney basically was like, hey, like there wasn't an motion for default. It was only a motion for default orders. And that immediately told the judge that, hey, like you built a house on sand. Essentially, you have no basis. Like it's going to collapse.
It was just a straight procedural error.
Yeah. And so
technical error, if you will.
Yeah. And I remember the judge, she was very nice. Like, she looked right at me. She made eye contact with me. And it was just like, I am so sorry. Like, you can hear the sincerity in her voice. And it wasn't the fact that, like, it did not feel like a rehearsed apology or anything. It felt genuine in the sense that she made eye contact with me. And then the look down was just like, crap.
Here it comes.
Because she knew that she had also made an error.
Yes.
My attorney had made an error.
Yes.
And then this also meant that because I was not legally married to her, I had no rights, period. Which basically, at that point, I had already spent well over 20 grand, which meant we were starting all over again.
Right.
We were starting back from the very beginning. So for 18 months without my son, I'm then told, basically, you have to start all over. Like,
well, and then the fact, it'd be different if your son was 5 when she took him and he had a previous, memory of you or relationship with you. But there's, we all know, that there's a very, precious time between, birth and, 1 or 2 years where there's that bonding. And so you hadn't even seen him at all, and he hadn't seen you. So, so the judge was like, okay, well, let's go. Cause she was claiming that you weren't even the father. So the judge ordered a paternity test, supervised visitation, which was
brutal.
Yes.
Brutal.
And then, his mom was not very helpful with having those supervised visits. And so it was just, and I was, let's go back to the day of the motion to vacate where, I was brokenhearted for you.
Yeah. And
I think I kind of, demanded at that point for you to at least get to meet your son on that day.
Yeah, no, I remember that. You were like She-Hulk.
I was mad because I was just like, this is not just.
You went after her mom in the courthouse, and she wasn't even sitting there with the other attorney. She was sitting behind her daughter, and you pointed her out in court. You were like, she's right there. And I was like, wow. Because with my other attorney, he just, okay. Like,
yeah. I'm not just going to lay down, and, take a beating. That's just not, I was raised with,
and then like,
I'm not like that.
I remember you were like, you know, can we bring the child to the courthouse? Like, he hasn't seen his child in X amount of months. He deserves to see his child. And I remember that, like, as soon as you did that, I felt like the judge that we had that had just apologized to me was just like, okay, now you're giving me now I have the chance to be a royal. Like,
right.
You know, like, you're gonna bring child to the courthouse, like, make arrangements now.
Yeah.
And
I think she gave her like a 2-hour window to get him up there. And she took all that 2 hours, didn't she?
Yeah, she did take all that 2 hours. And but at the same time, it's like, even the attorney that she had, she thought she was gonna bulldog us. And I'm like, whoa. You're on the wrong side of the table. Like, you don't understand who you're representing. Like, and I remember I told her, I was all like, I'm going to be his father. And even if he's not my child, I'm interested in fighting to adopt because I was there when he was born. Like,
well, and you supported her throughout the entire pregnancy. Yeah. Like, you were more than emotionally invested.
Yeah.
And but that, that time, it gave us time to get to know each other and for you to share more of all that you'd been through and more of your story with me, and for me to learn, because at this point I'm not your attorney, I'm just the fill-in. Well,
because we had sat there and we had talked during that entire time, and we both cried together. And it was also mainly, one, emotions are running high because of what just happened. Two, we're also tired. Like, court was at what time that morning? Like 9 a.m. And that meant it's a 2-hour drive from where I'm living to Oklahoma City. So I was up real early. So, I mean, we sat there and we talked about a bunch of stuff. And then I remember, like, her mom came in and sat down in the chairs. Cause like where we were sitting out is like a box. Like the 3 walls, the one behind you and the ones next to you are solid. And then what's in front of you is like glass, basically, like a glass wall.
It's a conference room.
Yeah, a conference. And I remember, like, I saw her mom sitting in a chair, and then we were just like, well, where is she? Where is she? Where is she? What's going on? And all of a sudden, I see her, and then all I see is tiny little kid with long, curly, blonde hair. And my first instinct was finally, but then also, like, I wanted to pick him up and hold him instantly. But then
you didn't know him.
He was like, I mean, he acted like he was terrified.
But I will say, because I got to watch, I got to watch the first time that Heavenly and Malachi made eye contact, and there was a spark of recognition there from your son. Like,
I know.
He saw you and he was like,
I think I
know you.
Yeah.
It touched me. So, I mean, I'm grateful to have that.
And I remember, like, we sat there on the floor, and I mean, it was difficult for him to interact with me because obviously he didn't know me because he had been alienated.
Yes.
And, I didn't realize as time progressed, the worst part is, when supervised visits started happening, it's bad because he obviously had a rifle attachment to his mom, right? But then for him to be left in a room with somebody that he doesn't know because he was taken away, to see the child that you watched be born and you've burped, taken care of, changed diapers, fed, completely like unawarely just like reject you is devastating. I don't wish that on anybody. Like, to physically see your child cry and look at you and say no because it's devastating. And I remember the place that we were doing supervised visits, they had cameras in there, and I remember the lady that interviewed both me and his mom, she felt really bad for me. Like, she knew because she had seen this happen before. So, like, as I'm sitting in the room with him, once I finally got him to calm down and play with some of the toys and stuff that I brought, and I brought stuff that, like, was basically scattered at the house that she had left, trying to like jog memory if possible. And you know, like the lady that interviewed us, she was sending pictures, she was taking photos of the monitor, and she wasn't supposed to do that. She wasn't supposed to do that because I wasn't allowed to take out my phone. I wasn't allowed to take pictures, video, anything. And she was doing that even though she knew she wasn't supposed to. And she was just all like, you know, I see what's happening. So like, I already knew at that point, like everybody else saw what was happening. So I knew I wasn't crazy. Like I knew I wasn't crazy. But then, you know, after that, we moved on to doing the paternity test. And that was difficult because you and I both, I was offering to pay for it. I was offering because I was like, let's get this done now, because we all knew that as soon as that paternity test came back, that I was the father, which you did text me and you were like, you are the father. And so like, it was a challenge just getting her to do it, because she was made aware that, hey, if he is the biological father, he has rights.
Absolutely.
And she prolonged for weeks.
Because your supervised visits were contingent on you being proven through the paternity test that you're a biological father. And after that was proven, then we could move away from supervised visits. And at some point between, I don't know, the motion to vacate date, I decided to take on your case, and we fired the old attorney. But it was because of who you were. And I've done a lot of family law cases, and you were by far the most committed parent.
And genuine.
Dedicated, committed. I mean, you know, it was just so moving to see your dedication to your child. And I couldn't turn my back on you at that point. So
I remember talking to you on the phone, and like, I mean, I could tell that you were frustrated because you were just all like, you know, the other attorney, like you were furious with that.
I couldn't talk to the other attorney on your behalf because I wasn't.
Well, no, I'm talking about my old attorney. I knew because like
lackluster.
Because that was the thing is like I could tell. I mean, that situation too. You were frustrated because you weren't my attorney, and you hadn't filed an motion to enter or anything, or entry of appearance. Like you couldn't talk to her attorney, and then the only attorney you could talk to was my attorney that was on the case. But then you were so furious with both situations, and I remember talking to you, and I was just like, I just somebody's outside.
My yard guy's here. Sorry, you'll be done soon.
So I just remember like asking you. I was like, "Can you please take my case?"
Yeah. Well, and I think I slept on it.
I know you did, but I also remember too going like, I don't want to guilt trip her, but like if she doesn't take my case, I'm screwed. I am screwed. Well,
I knew the type of attorney that I was subbing for that you had before me, and I could not have gone to sleep the next night knowing that you weren't being protected, and because like I knew the kind of service you were going to get.
Yeah.
Because anyway, but anyway, it was meant to be, and we had a really hard time. Once I finally did get permission, or once I did file a motion or entry of appearance on your behalf, I was speaking to the opposing counsel, and she was difficult.
Oh yeah.
You know, it was like there was nothing simple or easy, or it was difficult at every step of the way. And then the mother of your child was extremely difficult, allowing visits, and there's I don't know how much you want to go into that, but it was like you were half my life, because I would get so frustrated for you.
Yeah.
I've never seen such a.
There was just so much stuff that was going on.
It was so bad
that I literally was just like, So there was so much stuff that was happening, because like there's also a reason why I ended up with temporary sole custody, and that alone is a nutshell, because it was like, hey, I'm going to use every excuse under the sun to prevent you from having custody, or I'm going to lie and say that it's not your visitation.
Yeah, no, there.
Like,
Well, and we agreed to like hopefully be reasonable, me and the other attorney, and to get some sort of temporary visitation
Yep.
agreement in place so that we wouldn't have to go back to court and have a temporary order hearing. And it was impossible. Like we'd gone back and forth. And then we also, if you remember correctly, we were going back and forth and had an agreed a paternity agreement that she ended up.
Like I agreed.
Yeah, you were giving up more than you should have, but we were just trying to get.
Basically, I agreed to seeing him like once or twice every month, every other week. Basically, weekends only. I agreed to paying child support. I agreed to paying his insurance. I agreed to all this stuff and still got told no. Like, she literally had all of that. Yeah. And it still wasn't good enough.
She didn't have enough control.
So we're going to go ahead and return back to this subject in our next video. So be looking for that. There is a lot more topics and a lot more stuff. Both me and Mandy, we have our briefcase, we have our paperwork, and we are ready to start shoveling out some stuff. So tune back in for the next one, and I will see you guys later. Okay? Bye.
Bye.